Approach business to try to help business owners and executives. Consultants is one title, coaches is another, strategists is another, board of directors, all of those types of things. The way I approach it is, let me kind of describe those for a minute. Consultants, in my opinion, to a large degree, go into a business, offer them whatever a solution is or whatever solution they ask for, whatever it is they do. They hand them the manual. Here it is. We printed it out. We solved it. Here it is. Good luck. Goodbye. And then you leave. That's consultants. I mean, that's traditional. In coaching, as you well know, both of you well know, is about asking questions, because a lot of times the people have the solutions. And then in that scenario, they're also left to a degree to go ahead and resolve whatever it is they're working on once we kind of peel back the layers and expose it. What I add to that is I go inside of businesses with strategic advisory. I typically coach all the executives. Oftentimes I'll put together coaching groups for the management team, but I stay embedded in the company to help them to execute on whatever the strategy is. That seems to be the difference. And I take kind of a holistic view of that so that I end up working with a lot of the people, and at the very least getting to know pretty much all of the employees. And I work with mid-sized companies up to about $200, $300 million. So staying in there and hanging in with them long term is what I've built, and it seems to work really well. I've helped turn companies from successful to super successful, companies that are kind of fading into bright, shiny objects again. So that's kind of it. I hang in long term.
I got to jump on two things that I think are important for everybody else to understand. And I've thought of this for a number of years because I used to wear the consultant label. Mm-hmm. And I found it very interesting in the last probably 5 years, maybe a little bit more, that consultant, with the air quotes around it for those of you driving your car, it's got a bad rap. What happened there that nobody wants to be a consultant. They all want to be coaches now. So what's your opinion in that, and what's going on there in the industry?
Before you go there, I want to add something, because I heard this once, that it's a consultant's job is to go into the business and convince them to do something that they know that they need to do, but they don't want to do it, so they pay you lots of money to come in and make them do the thing that they knew they already needed. And that little bit of a definition, I know it's a funny one, but I feel like that kind of paints a little bit of a picture there as well.
Yeah.
That's kind of the flavor of it,
Yeah. I'm sorry. Go back to Otis. What were you asking, Otis?
So why?
What changed?
Why does the consultant get the bad rap? If I can go in as a coach and everybody's like, "Oh, the coach is here." But you go in as a consultant, everybody's like,
"Yeah." Man. I think Cam kind of nailed it. Is that you're trying to make them do something that they need to do. Mm-hmm. If they don't want to do it, they're never going to do it. I don't care what they're paying you, what anybody's saying. But coaching is another version of leading, and to go back to what you said, Cam, the brief description of the difference between coaching and consulting to me is consulting is telling, coaching is asking. We may have to cut that out. I don't know. But anyway, so consulting is telling, coaching is asking. Nobody wants to be told what to do. But if you keep asking the questions and peeling back the layers in a true coaching mode, and I know you guys are certified and have lots of experience, as am I, but if you really go in from a coaching mode, you're going in from a curiosity standpoint. I'm curious, Otis, tell me more about this. And you get them to open up, and that's where you find out they have a lot of the answers, but also sometimes they don't know what it is they really want. And so once you peel those layers back and start to expose that, then once they have those aha moments, then they'll want to do whatever that thing is. They'll want to lead their people. So it has to be from within their own wants and needs. And oftentimes in coaching scenarios, I've seen where they say they want one thing, and once you peel back the layers, it's not even close. So I think so what changed, Otis? I think probably because the consultants got a bad rap, and they're going, "Oh, these coaches seem to be beloved, so let's do that." So maybe that's simple. I don't know. I never wore a consultant label, so I don't know.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, here's the next one, and because I always joke about this with clients and particularly veterans when I'm working with veterans is strategy. And because you've mentioned strategy, how would you define strategy versus I don't know, operations? I'll make it semi-simple.
Okay.
Because to me, the joke is strategy is we're going to do business over here.
Yeah.
And then we'll do some more business over here. Back in radio land, I'm waving my hand, big
Yes.
hand, little map sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Most businesses start out if they're closely held, and like I say, even businesses up to $500 million, they often started out as sole proprietors, maybe a couple of people, one person doing the technical thing, whatever the technical thing is, either selling widgets, making widgets, selling services. They come out and repair your copy machine back in the day, or they do all your IT work, whatever it is. You're selling something, and oftentimes those businesses start as one person or two people. And those people are the quote unquote technicians. And this all comes from a book from about 25 years ago called The E-Myth. I don't know if you've heard of that, but that's kind of where you get the concept. And those businesses grow. And I'm sure you've got clients and people that are in this position. They're $50 million, and the technician's running the company now. And he's grown. He has to have grown in some level or another, but oftentimes they still have their hands on the knobs, or they're, euphemism I say is they're packing boxes in the back room still at $50 million. And so there's no strategy. They come up without a strategy except sell more, sell more, sell more. Let's make some more money, and they just keep going. And it works. It works really, really well. And I'm thinking of one of my clients right now, then they get to a point to where they're selling more, but they're not making a lot, or they're making less, or maybe their gross margin and their net margins shrink. Well, that's because they don't have a solid strategy in place. There's nobody really watching the efficiencies, and there's a whole bunch of operational things that are happening that aren't serving the business well. So when I come in and look at the strategy, oftentimes they're going, what is strategy? We don't really know what that means. Or they know what it means, and maybe the consultant came in. I will throw in a consultant under the bus for a minute. Came in and said, here's the book. And I go, well, we don't want to do this. We got boxes to pack, And so that's where you have to lead them to finding out, what do you want in a strategy? What's the end result? Start with the end and, begin with the end in mind. I don't know if that's Ken Blanchard who I'm quoting there. I can't remember. But begin with you start with the end in mind. What result do you want? And it's not always just money either. There's a whole lot in between, selling something and money. And if money's the only thing, it's not going to be very successful. That's not a good ultimate result. There's a lot of things and people and processes in between. So that's the way I look at strategy. If you don't have one, then it's like, if you don't know where you're going, then any route is fine, right? So I don't know if that helps or not. That's kind of my take on it.
There you go. And there's your stoic reference for the
Yes.
day. Is,
yes.
If you know not what port you sail to, any wind is favorable, right?
That's right. That's right. And by the way, I noticed that you've got a quote I noticed somewhere. I think it's on your LinkedIn page from the Stoics. And I'm reading all the Ryan Holiday books. I've read almost all of them, and I think I'm on. I can't remember. I'm on one of them right now, but I've read them all a couple of times. But those are great books for business and for life.
Oh yeah.
Talking about the growth inside of that business, Larry, it makes me think of the way I always like to describe it is the entrepreneur who becomes a CEO, and they might not have the skill sets there for the strategy to implement those strategies. Do you think that's, and we're painting some broad strokes here, but do you think that tends to go back to the individual skill set, or is it a little bit of conscious or subconscious, like blindness to what needs to be done? If you had to pick one of those two, which one do you put it in?
So if I heard you right, you're saying is it learned, or I'm sorry, say it another way if you will. I'm not quite sure what the question is.
Is it the entrepreneur becoming the CEO and then having issues, implementing the strategy and developing strategy? Do you think that's a lack of the skill set, that they have the skill set for the entrepreneur but not necessarily for the CEO, or do you think that they wind up being blind to their shortcomings or to the business's shortcomings?
I think what happens is they start out with certain skill sets, being the technician, if they've started from scratch, or even if they've grown a business from X to Y. Let's say that they even came in or bought a business, which happens a lot. Let's say they bought a $5 million revenue business and they're perfectly capable of running that, and they run it up to 10 million and they're doing a pretty good job. And then they get to 15 million and they kind of run out of runway. They don't have the skills to make that leap. And so it's an education process is possibly one answer to it. We all, when we're born, we don't know much of anything, right? And so you have to go up from there. So at some point in your life, I don't know many people that aren't learning along the way. And if they aren't learning, it's not that they necessarily don't want to learn, but maybe they just haven't evolved or learned, or whatever the term is, from the entrepreneur to the CEO. And I work with a lot of people that are in that arc, somewhere along that arc, because it goes back to the technician analogy, is that they have to figure out how to get there. And oftentimes, and I just did this recently with one of my clients, at a 65-year-old company, the owner is evolved. He inherited it from his father roughly 40 years ago, and he ran out of runway to grow the company. And so I went in one day, and this is a long-time client, and I said, we've been working on your strategy for about a year. We've only achieved about 25% of what your goal was. And so let's not do that anymore. It's not working for you, and I don't want to waste your time and money. But I do have a plan if you're interested. So this was a day that I'm either going to get fired or we're going to make it work, one of the two. And so he said, well, what's the plan? I said, I'd like to replace you with an outside president and a board of directors. And we did it. And I'm on the board, but I put another CEO in there. And we've been at it about 6 months now, and we're turning this thing like a small battleship. It's turning pretty quickly. And a lot of people have been replaced, profits coming up, sales are jumping, a lot of stuff's going on. But he ran out of runway, and he wants to exit. He's at an age where he wants to exit also, but he just didn't have the skill set, and frankly hasn't for a long time, to do a certain part of the business. He's a master technician. What the company does, that's what's kept it alive. But he didn't have the right skill set for another piece of the business. So now that we put somebody in there that has the massive skill set for that, now you've got a great technician. The company's actually run by the technicians that he put together, and now you've got the other part of the business. And so we're going to grow this into a business that's crazy profitable, and it doesn't have to get that much larger, but there's just so much operationally that's missing that it barely makes any money. So I hope that's a long answer to a short question.
No, it definitely answered it. But what
okay.
I'm really curious about there, as you're going through your answer, is do you think that as that entrepreneur, and you recognize that you have the shortcomings when it comes to the skill set, I think, because it's our baby, you want to keep working on it. But then also I'm kind of thinking, if you need 6 months to a year of education, that's a lot of time for the business to be running inefficiently. And so have you ever had to have that conversation to where it's like, I know you could do this and I know you could learn it, but it's not the smartest thing for the business at this time?
Right. Yeah, I run into that often. And oftentimes where I see the gap, it's not just teaching the CEO to become a better CEO. Oftentimes it's building a team around them, because it makes no sense, and it's really difficult to grow a business without the team. So as a company grows, using the analogy again from 5 to 10 million, and then you start bumping them against 15 or 25 or whatever million, they need a level of executives that with professional skills that mostly CEOs shouldn't have or don't want to have. They may understand, for example, and this is where there's always a big gap, or oftentimes a big gap, is the financial area. I've worked with CEOs who run $20 million companies and they can't read their own financial statements. That's very common. Very common. Do we have money in the bank this morning? Yes. Okay, let's keep going. It's not quite that simple, but it's close sometimes. They don't know what's going on financially. And so when they grow that, let's say they hit that ceiling they can't get past, the best thing for them to do is to bring in somebody like ourselves here, or consultants or whoever, to help them figure out, what's next, and how to get to that next level. And I, as you, I think, know, I run peer advisory groups, and that's one of the big things when I bring all the executives together once a month. They help each other. They look across the table and go, have you done this before? Oh, yeah, we did that 5 years ago. Well, how'd you get there? Another guy or another woman will pop in and go, oh, here's how we did it. And they're going, oh, wow, this is great. Now I can grow my business because I don't have to create this out of nothing. You guys can help me. We can help each other. And that's how the smart operators get there. They will recognize they need something, and sometimes they don't know what they're missing, and so they start looking around until they find an Otis or a Cam or a Larry or somebody, or some group to help them figure it out. And that's the smart money, is hire the people that can help you get there quickly and efficiently.
That's so important, and it's a little extra fresh in my mind because I had what was it, three or four client calls yesterday, four yesterday, which all transitioned from I want a job during the call to I want to become an entrepreneur, and what's that going to take?
Yeah.
And I found this really interesting. Again, this is freshness in the mind, but one of them, his fear of becoming an entrepreneur was because when my business gets successful, I won't be able to scale because I don't know how to scale. And I was like, dude, you haven't even come up with an idea yet. You're already telling me that you can't run a business that's successful. But it really makes me want to ask you that question: is what's the indicator? So if I'm CEO Otis, and I'm running, let's say Trojan Spirits, right? I'm running my Trojan Spirits bourbon business, and I've all of a sudden, I've hit this point to where now I can't just do it all, right? I can't be the master distiller or the HR guy, all these sort of things. I have to start doing something different. What are some indicators that me as the founder, I have to raise the red flag and go, oh crap, I need to do something different or we will fail?
Yeah. Well, the number one thing is you identified a need. You don't know what it is, but you've identified the problem, the need, the something, because a lot of entrepreneurs will be head down so long they'll just run into a wall. And so that's the perfect client that calls and goes, man, we're just, we're trying to grow, or we're trying this, I don't know what to do. That's the perfect client because they do know what to do. They just don't know how to mine that, and so that's where the coaching skills come in. So Otis, tell me more about fill in the blank. Tell me more about this. What got you here today? What is it you're losing sleep over? And then we maybe get into the mechanics of it. What's your profitability? What's your sales? A little bit of that. But you start to get to know the individual. What's in their heart. If you can get to their passion, then you kind of go from there, because the passion got them there, and the skills, they're running out of that skill set runway, and so that's where you go with that. And like your friend you were talking to, that's kind of laughable, but he's jumped to 5-year down the road fear, or 10-year down the road fear when he doesn't even know what he wants to do.
I know. I did fuss at him, and you know me well enough to know that I didn't hold back on that, that conversation.
Yeah. So. Hope that answered your question.
Yeah, well, it does, and I think that's an important thing that to share out there, because if you're in that path, and here's as you were talking about head down and working. It just made me think of the days that I used to swim laps. And you know what? If you're not looking for that black tea on the bottom of the pool, guess what's going to happen? The top of your head's going to hurt pretty bad here in a second, or you're going to smash your finger. Because I don't know about you, but I've done that a few times.
Sure, we all have.
Yeah. So how does that founder? Because that's huge. Camden mentioned the baby, right? This is my baby. I don't want to share it, or I don't want to expose anything to judgment. How painful does it have to become for somebody to finally say, come on in, Larry, I don't care.
Yeah. To me, one of the things that I've noticed in all of my clients is the level of self-awareness. If it's high, they see it coming early. If it's not, and they've got a big ego, then they oftentimes don't see it coming. They'll hit the wall, or they'll blame somebody else, or they'll do a bunch of stuff that doesn't help, and so they kind of get in that desperation spiral. So it doesn't have to be painful. If they learn along the way, like I said, that arc from being the technician to the CEO, if they learn, or they keep their eyes open and they have some self-awareness, and they got enough humility to, at the $10 million mark, using the analogy again, they're going, I'm going to need some help to get this to 15 instead of waiting to the 14 million. And they're going, man, we're just stretched to the max. We can't go. I don't know what to do. So it just, that depends a lot on that self-awareness to me. And if you really are a lifelong learner, which I think a lot of good long-term CEOs are, they figure out that learning is the key, and also sharing and being open with your, it depends on the company, your employees and such. But the most successful people, CEOs, companies, however you want to put it, along with self-awareness and humility, they'll realize that the real key to all of it is the people. It doesn't matter how smart you are or what you know or anything except taking care of the people. And again, I've got a couple of clients that are at the far end of that spectrum, one on each end, one of them where their culture is horrible, and the other one where their culture is great, long-term employees. And it's all the leader. The leader's got to have those traits. They've got to have that self-awareness and that humility to look around at all the time and see what's going on, who's doing what, how people are doing. How are your people? Are they okay on even on a personal level? I mean, you don't necessarily want to go and be buddies with them, but you have to take care of everybody. You have to, using your term, you have to be sure that your tribe is doing okay. And that you're tending to them. And if you do, it won't be as painful.
That makes me think of something you've said several times, Dad, which is, when we talk about servant leadership, and you say, well,
yeah,
it's just leadership, because if you're not a servant leader, then you're not a very good leader.
Exactly.
You're talking about, the CEO that has that ego and doesn't have that self-awareness. I'm not even sure how to put this into a question, but there's a part of me that goes, well, then that's not the leader. They're not going to find success. But obviously those people do still find some success in life. And so I guess how does that lack of ego, how does that ego then, and lack of self-awareness rather, bleed into the team? And what do you see that do to the culture in the long run?
What often happens is a leader with ego will surround himself with other big egos. There'll be a lot of backslapping at the mid and upper levels, and there sometimes is a fair amount of dissent through the ranks because of that. They're looking at these big egos, and the guys that are really packing the boxes and making the widgets, they're a little disgruntled maybe, or they don't feel like they're part of the company. I think there's a cost there, and maybe it's not always something that you can see, but there's definitely a cost there. If they're not feeling taken care of, they will maybe do things that are detrimental to the company, or just not work as efficiently as they could. And we both know, of course, that in spite of all that, some companies are massively successful and massively profitable. So how do they get there? I don't know. I guess they just grind through it. And once in a while, it could be companies that either come across a product or a service that is massively popular and profitable, and then for at least for a length of time, and sometimes it's a long time, it doesn't matter how big of a jerk the CEO is or any of that. They just happen to stumble into that. But I still say the companies where the employees are taken care of last forever and ever. I just read something the other day, and I've known this, you guys probably have for a long time, that Southwest Airlines is one of the most beloved companies on the planet. And it's because the culture there is just top notch. The CEOs, matter of fact, I believe they're on their second CEO, I believe. Herb Keller, was CEO for a long, long time. I believe the founder. I don't know that he's there anymore. I can't remember. He may have aged out or something. But anyway, that's an example. And you see it in their employees. When you're on the planes, when you're in the airport, anytime you're around and I even saw a bunch of employees one time on a shuttle bus to Southwest, and they were all chatting up like they're going to the party, and they had just gotten off of their shift, And so to me, and that's how good companies last forever. And think about, using that example again, how many airlines have come and gone in the last 50 years. Matter of fact, I think this is Southwest's 50th year, if I'm not mistaken. I believe that's what I saw. And so many airlines have come and gone, but Southwest, they keep going. They're profitable. They take care of their people. So I don't know. There's a little bit of everything out there when it comes to leadership style, but people love working for good leaders, and people, and the leaders that are not in that beloved area. People just slog themselves to work every day because they have to. So I don't know. That's my view from kind of 30,000 feet, if you will.
That brings up. Hey, go ahead, Dad.
I was going to say they're singing Dolly Parton's song, "Working 9 to 5."
Exactly.
There's so much. There's so many people out there that I would love to dive into this, or just get your definition or description is probably a better way of putting it, Larry. Is describe a good culture, or you could even say the ideal culture of an organization. So, and I'll give you parameters. All right.
Okay.
So we're $25-30 million revenue. We're about let's say 30 people on overhead. That's too big. About 20 people on overhead, and probably another 50, 60 that are billable. Right. The services industry. What would that culture be that would keep everybody happy and bought in, or whatever term?
Okay. Well, it goes back to the things I've already talked about. If the leader in a top-notch culture, the leadership is truly a servant leader. He makes sure that the people around him or her, the leadership team, if you will, is humble. They've got self-awareness. They have a vision and a mission. You see a lot of those things written hanging on the wall. But what I'm talking about is truly a vision that is, if not repeated often, is thoroughly understood. And the vision might be, something ridiculously simple as long as our people are happy, our customers are happy. Something like, I just made that up. I think I'm going to write that down somewhere, but it's something like that.
It's a good thing we're recording.
But I mean, that's kind of the crux of it. If our employees are happy, our customers will be happy. So what does that mean? How do you make them happy? Well, you can't always, but you can think of everyone in your organization as humans. How are you doing today? You pay attention to when somebody comes to work and they're a little off, and maybe their boss or their leader or their manager or their lead on the manufacturing floor or whatever pulls them aside and they goes, "Hey, Cam, what's going on today? You seem a little bit off." Well, my son fell at baseball practice yesterday and broke his arm, and whatever, and you're aware. It's not that you're going to rush in and do anything necessarily, but it might be, do you need the afternoon off? Yeah, I really need to take him to the doctor. Okay, well, we'll cover for you. Little things like that mean everything to people at every level. I've got an example of a good culture, and this is kind of a little bit of a weird one, but one of my clients' sales manager's son was in college, and he got, I think it turned out he got falsely accused of sexual battery or something on another college student. I mean, that's horrendous. Excuse me. Well, the father was already a very high stress guy, and he just fell apart, and he couldn't work, and came to the CEO, who's my client, and told him about it. And he said, "You do what you've got to do. We got you covered." And he was off work for probably 6 weeks just because he kind of just had a mental breakdown. And this happened to be, the CEO happened to be a hired gun, not an owner. And so his CEO, he's a president, and then the CEO came into town and he told him about that. And the CEO, the international CEO, said, "Be sure he's covered." Same story. So the same message going throughout the organization said, "You just make sure that Sam is covered. Don't cut his pay. Don't have him use vacation at all. Just keep going. We'll cover him while he's gone." So that's a culture, and I'll guarantee you he will never forget that support, and other people will learn about it. And it's people being self-aware and putting value in the people. That's the top-notch culture. It's all about the people all the time, And it's also being a leader. You know, I've seen leaders, excuse me, they'll make mistakes and try to be friends with their employees. Go out, have a couple of drinks with them, be too much buddy. Well, then that backfires on them, and you know, something happens and he has to be, you know, have some discipline or do something that's, you know, that's not as popular. And he goes, oh, I thought we were pals. Well, no, you can't do that. You know, if I have to, they should know this, but if I have to advise them, I'll say, listen, if the guys are going somewhere and having a beer, or they're going to shoot pool or whatever, show up for a beer, have one, and then go home. You know, just, you know, fly the flag for a couple of minutes, buy a round, get out. You know, or something, but you can't hang with them all night. So, I don't know. I'm kind of rattling on here. I don't know if I answered your question or not, but that's
that's perfect. And that example, it holds so true, and it just reminds me. I saw this happen in the Army so many times. One of the biggest issues in the military, in my experience, we'll even just talk right down to the special ops community, is the guy who grew up in the exact same organization. And this happens in business too, the same thing. You know, he's the line worker who gets all the way up to, let's say the equivalent would be like a vice president or something along those lines, right? And there's this weird sort of, he can't quite get his foot out of that line worker sort of culture, wants to be one of the guys. And what that does is it sets him up for failure.
Yes,
I've seen it way too many times where internal promotion, the guy grows up to that next level. First level, I've seen success there, but they get two more, and they still try to be that guy, that hangs out till 2 a.m. playing pool or whatever.
Yeah, can't do it.
Man,
it'll backfire on you.
Recipe for falling off the edge every time.
Yeah, I've got a story for you if you want to hear one about an arc of about 5 or 6 years. A client that I think is it's one of my proudest stories. One of my longest clients. I've worked with them for about 10 years, maybe longer. I helped the minor partner buy the company out and buy 100% of it. And so after that, it turned out that he's really a salesman and not a great leader. But he stumbled along for 4 years as the leader of it. And it just wasn't doing what it needed to do. The profit was better because the partners he bought out were almost running it into the ground. So we got the profitability up very quickly. But then it wasn't rising culturally hardly at all. It was still stumbling along. And as the company started to grow, he needed a general manager because he just couldn't handle it. It just wasn't doing it. So I was doing what I call an insider group, where I was managing leading a group of managers once a month on about a 3-hour meeting to try to figure out what their communication needs were. Just what are their needs? How do they get them to bond? And through that, I found out they had some pretty bad actors in there. The guys were stealing. This is a manufacturing company in the construction industry. And but there was one guy that really stood out in this group, and he was a younger guy, had some college, not a degree, and he was, but he was really a standout. So I went to the owner, and I said, you've been looking outside a little bit, but it's a very unique industry, and so I said, this guy is the guy you should put in the general manager's spot. He's only been there about 5 years, and you've got some real long-term employees, but a lot of them are the bad actors, or don't have skills, or they're kind of associating with the bad actors, and all that. And so we talked for a while, and I finally convinced him to give this guy a shot as a general manager. And then I go back a couple of days, and I said, he said, whenever you announce this, I'd like to be there for it. He goes, oh, I can't do it. Yeah, I can't do it. I've decided it's going to be too risky. The guys are going to revolt and this and that. So we talked about it for a few more days, and he finally said, okay. I said, all right, well, I'd like to be there. So I actually got to announce it to him, and the guy turned white as a sheet. He had no idea it was coming. And I said, here's what's going to happen. I said, you're going to have a revolt from 2 or 3 of these long-term bad actors. I said, and they're going to push back, and they're going to try to sabotage it. And And they did. They had the two or three of the bad actors got the CEO and the owner in the office, and they railed on him for like 4 hours. But he held tight, and he let it happen. I wasn't there for that, but he said they were in there they were just yelling at him and stuff, and and he didn't have the strength, to put his foot down. But he ultimately stood tight. So then I continued on with the inner circle group, but the guy that was in there was general manager. Now he was out because he was leadership. He was no longer management. And so for 2 months, all these guys are going, that guy's not going to do anything. He can't do the job, blah, blah, blah. But that guy had he was such a good at servant leadership and such a company man that he stood his ground, the leader, the general manager, the new general manager, and he was consistent every day and driving towards a vision of quality and serving the employees as well as the customers. And 3 months later, the guys, those bad actors came back in there going, hey, he's doing a pretty good job. He's not a bad guy. And so it turned. And I told him, I said, give it 2 or 3 months, it'll turn. And it started to. And then as it evolved over the next couple of years, he got rid of all but a couple of the bad actors. And one of them was, I thought he would never get rid of this one guy, but he put this one guy in a couple of different positions to try to find a home for him because he was horrible at what he was doing. And he put him in another pretty significant position, and he was worse at that. And so finally, he went to the owner and said, we got to get rid of this guy. And my advice to him always is people like that, give them an exit package, have a retirement party if it's the right age or whatever, make them go away as happy as you possibly can, and everybody will see that. You take care of people when they come in, you take care of people when they leave. And it continued on, and he built that company to very high profitability. And he built his own skills because this young leader, and I had also put him in one of my leadership groups, he was good but didn't have great confidence. He had skills, but the confidence was lacking. And the other leaders in the group helped him build his confidence. And today he's very, very confident, still very humble, and is still a really great leader. And really turned the company around and turned the culture around. But he was very consistent. He set the vision, and the owner never could even set a vision. He was a salesman. That's all. That's all he really knew. So anyway, I've had a lot of fun with that, and it's really been wonderful. Like the biggest payoff for me is to watch my clients grow individually, and the companies grow as well. So, that really I think about that one a lot, and it's a great example of what can happen. Without a magic wand. It's just a day to day, and the coaching concept basically is what got us there. Ask the questions, teach him to be a coach. So anyway, that's my fun story.
I love that. And, that actually sets up a question I've been kind of pondering a little bit over here, is that there's an incentive problem when it comes to leaders. And we probably don't have time to actually solve this. Maybe we can get a couple ideas out. But what it is that you have people who, it's like the two archetypes, the huge ego and then the humble servant leader. And the huge ego, because of the way life is, they get the early success and they can build on the success. They take those risks. The example I think of is people in finance, where it's you climb your way up because you took these risks, but you really just took the same percentage risk as everyone else, but you're the one person who got it right. But so you keep getting rewarded on that, but that's not actually a skill set. And I think there's a very similar type of thing inside of leadership, where it's like the servant leader, because you're a servant to the company, you might get walked over, and then the person who talks the loudest is going to be the person that gets those promotions and things. Yeah. And so I think there's this cultural incentive problem where we're rewarding the wrong behavior. And like I said, we might just be teasing episode 2 with Larry, but I want to throw that over to you, Larry. How do you think a company can approach changing that culture so that they're not rewarding that wrong behavior, and instead rewarding the behavior that we want, which is, like a servant leader?
Yeah, it comes back to the stuff we've already talked about. The one client I've got right now that's got the horrible culture we're turning, just by ignoring certain parts of by ignoring certain people-oriented things in the company, have created all these silos, and the whole company's full of bad actors. I mean, they will actually sabotage work so that they have more work the next day, or so they can have overtime. It's horrible. It's a horrible culture. But it comes back to the way you eliminate that or you avoid that is the CEO, the leaders have to be the self-aware, humble, and have their whole team follow that same path. And if they do, and it goes throughout the whole company, You won't have that where people are promoted for the wrong reasons. You won't have the egos being built at different levels in those silos to where you get to one department and go, oh boy, you can't go in that department Larry runs. He runs that with an iron fist. You can't get anything done in there. Well, that won't happen if the leadership is really paying attention and following the vision. And so often the question that should be asked that maybe isn't asked is in any kind of meeting at any level, the question often should be asked, does this serve our vision? Does this serve our mission? Does it serve our employees? Does it serve our customers? Any question, anything that comes up, geez, should we do this? Well, answer it with those questions. Well, it doesn't really serve our customer base because it's something outside. Well, let's talk about that maybe as a separate thing. Is this a new business line we're talking about? Or is this just a shortcut we're trying to do? Does this shortcut impact our product that can impact our customer negatively? Yes. Well, then that's an easy no. Don't do it. So it really comes back to the people. And of all the clients I have and have had, where those leaders are that leader, the humble, servant leader model, happy employees, well-paid, over-market paid employees in many cases, and super profitable. I've got several clients that fit that model. And guess what? Guess what happened the last 2 years? They didn't lose any employees because they're very well paid. They're over-market. They can't be poached. And it just falls through. So that's the only way. If you've got egos throughout, you're going to have those challenges. You're going to have people getting promoted for the wrong reason, for somebody kissing somebody else's ass, and people seeing that, and it just makes for bad blood. And somebody will say, I'm not going to go that route, or I can't do that much ass kissing to get that job as much as Otis can. He's just too good at it,
Yeah, years of refinement here.
That's right.
Of that ass. Yeah,
you probably saw a little bit of that in the military, right?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, that's an understatement.
Hope that answered your question, Cam.
What I've done.
Yeah.
I've seen a couple of guys who I can remember back in the day that moved up the chain rather rapidly because they were very good at toting to their bosses all the things that they accomplished.
Sure.
Yeah.
So. Did that answer your question, Cam?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Much better than I thought, actually. I was worried we were going to go down quite a rabbit hole on that.
No. It comes back to people.
Yeah. Well, and for me, that's the easy. What did I learn? Is it's people.
Yeah.
I'm going back to one of my favorite questions that I asked you, Larry, and because I think this is so critical for both sides, the individual, the CEO, and the outside guy coming in, the coach. What's that indicator? And I think that's so important. And one of the ones you said was we're selling more, but we're not making more. Mm-hmm. Right? Our profit margin, and that's a critical thing for the CEO to understand, not just cash flow in, cash flow out, but what's my true profit margin? Mm-hmm. That's so important to understand because my revenue may have increased, but has my profit gone up also, either percentage wise or whatever, without diving into it. I think that's such a key indicator for all business leaders and even a business coach or an executive coach looking in to help them identify that. So I think that for me, that was a great reminder that's a huge indicator for that business leader. Yeah.
Well, everything comes out of profit, right? And and to put a little bit finer point on it, the people issue, having the right people in the right places, like Jim Collins says, the right people in the right seat on the bus, is super important as far as profitability goes, because you can have really good, kind people, but if they don't have the skill sets that can really drive the profit, then that's another thing you've got to really look for. That's a more technical piece than the warm, fuzzy, servant leadership type thing. But that's where you really got to sharpen your skills as a CEO, is to determine, if you don't know how to make it more profitable or what, then figure out what type of people can help you make that profitable. the finance guy, the sales guy, the sales trainer. I'm thinking of one client that I work with right now. He's the best negotiator I've ever met in my life. They do military contracts, and the military comes in and actually audits their books to see how much profit they're making. This guy, matter of fact, they just came in again this week at that client, and every time they leave, they make more money. He is that good a negotiator. He shows them, here's all of our cost, here's exactly what we're doing, and he's probably kind of a spin doctor, but it's all true. He shows them this, and this is how this is what our costs are. This is how we need to make profit, and he does. But this guy has, that particular person was involved in the sale of the company. He was an employee of one company, helped the owner sell it for a massive amount of money about 2 years ago, and now he's the CEO of the company under the new ownership. But this also one's got a great culture. They've got all the right people in the right places. But that's where oftentimes I'll get brought in, and one of the first few questions is, what are your sales? What are your sales history? Where are you going? What's your profitability look like? And why? And if I've looked at and spent many, many hours on financial statements, and so I comb over them pretty quickly to see where are the anomalies or what's it looking like over the last few months or years or whatever. And I know various industries, and anything in manufacturing, this is a very broad statement, but anything in manufacturing, the profitability should easily be in double digits, if not high double digits. And if you're in single digits and you're in manufacturing, you could be in a commodity item where there's millions of them, but if you're in any kind of specialty manufacturing, it should be very profitable. And if you're not, then something's going on inside. Your prices are too low, your efficiency is really low, you don't have the right suppliers. There's things like that going on, and that's one of the first things I look at, because you're right, it is the ultimate key indicator, because everything gets paid out of profit, everything. So people want to make more money, then let's be doing their job. And just to, the one final thing on that is everybody in the company should have some impact on profitability. And a lot of them might think that they don't, but they all do. I don't care if it's the janitor. If one of the bathrooms is out of order and now the guy's got to walk across the plant, that's a few minutes, that's a few dollars. Every little thing counts towards the profit. And if the vision is set and the mission is set by the leadership and people throughout the factory know that, even to the slightest degree, they only see it once in a while, they know that they have a little bit of an impact on profit. So.
No, that's so great. Great. Camden, about you, what'd you learn?
This is one, I think I was familiar with the concept, but just never heard it coined this way, of the skill set runway that we were talking about. Such a great way to think about it. I always thought, the financial runway, definitely use that term many times, but the skill set runway, that is such a good way of thinking about it. And, I think just like the financial runway creates that interesting picture where it's, okay, you got these skill set, you can try to grow some along the way, or you could stop, hit it again, and, start a new runway, but it's like either way, that's going to run out at some point. Just being aware of that. I loved that term.
Yeah.
Larry, how about you, man? What'd you learn?
I learned you guys have a lot of great questions, and I love, the more I talk about business and delve into it, the more it reminds me of things to look for. And it gets, anytime I get to talk about this, it gets my juices flowing again so that I can maybe help people in a better way. When I talk to some clients later today, I'll think of some of the things that we talked about today. So you guys bring challenge me quite a bit here today, but I really appreciate it. So it's good stuff.
And I'll just say I'm proud of you, because you were getting excited, but you managed to stay in your chair. I thought you were going to get up there a couple of times and start waving your arms and preaching.
Yeah. Let me leave you with one final thing. I just happened to be reading for probably the third time a book, The Heart of Coaching by Thomas Crane. You may know that book. There's a list in there that shows what managers think people want and what people want. And money is at the top of what managers think people want, and it's about number 5 down a list of about 10 or 12 of what people, and the main thing that people, and when I say people, I mean the employees want, they want to be in the know. They want to be in the conversation about what's going on, not necessarily in the decision, but they want to be made aware. The company right now that I'm putting, that I put the CEO and the board in, we had a board meeting yesterday, and I said, what's missing at this point, we're 6 months in or so, 6 months, I said the middle managers are feeling left out from the coaching I'm getting is they don't know what's going on. We've been here 6 months and they're starting to grumble. Well, they don't know. So I'm going to put together a meeting for the middle managers and do a Q&A and tell them about all the things that we've done. Also, thank them for their part in it. You guys have made here's what you've made happen. You've helped us do this. I want to bring them into the conversation, but also make them understand that they are part of the solution. They're helping us turn the culture and keep going, that we still need your help, whatever that conversation is. But that way they are brought in. And these people, everybody there has received raises. They were way underpaid. And, we've already proven the point that's not turning it. It's the rest of the cultural thing. So anyway, that book, by Thomas Greene, The Heart of Coaching, has got some good stuff in there too.
That's a great one.
But anyway, thanks for challenging me today. I appreciate it.
How do folks find you, get in touch with you, follow you, whatever the best means is to see what you got going on?
You can look me up at mercuryleadership.net or just simply larrygreene.com. Either one takes you to the same place. Most of my business is by referral. The peer advisory groups that I run 3 of those, which is full-day groups that I bring together. One is from CEOs, one is for key executives, and most of those are people that work for the CEOs in my CEO group. And then I run a third group that does the same thing, but it's for service providers, professionals like CPAs, wealth managers, insurance brokers, things like that. And it's all about personal and professional growth. That's what the groups are about. And of course, them helping each other. It's not, I'm kind of driving the bus. It's not all about my knowledge. It's about these people in these groups helping each other. So if you know anybody anywhere, and I do this remotely as well as in person, the coaching, I do individual coaching with all these people as well. And usually those contacts lead to some type of strategic advisory work. And I also sit on a few boards, and that's what I'm looking more for, is more boards of directors, because of all this years of knowledge that I've packed in. I love sharing it wherever I can and help guide some of these companies to bigger and better things. So that's kind of my story.
Awesome, man. I appreciate it, and thanks for not only just your time, but the understanding and philosophy that you shared with us today. I think it's I got a lot out of it.
Good deal.
And I know the folks that are listening really appreciate that.
Good deal.
Thank you again for your time.
Well, thank you guys for having me on. I love doing this kind of stuff, and this is sport to me. It's some people can talk baseball and football all day long, but this is kind of my sport. I love it. I understand it. I love when I find ways to help people. That's kind of my thing in life. Is whenever I can help somebody in a business like this, it changes lives, and not just a few. Oftentimes it's many, and if I can have somebody, even the lowest level person, benefit from the work that I do, and their life is a little bit better, that's a big win for me. So thanks for letting me sit here and chat about this for an hour.
That's great. That's great. Thank you. Camden, run us out.
All right. Thank you all for listening to the Cam Otis Show, and a special thanks to our guest, Larry Greene, for joining us today. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to pass it along to someone else so they can enjoy it too. Follow the Cam Otis Show on Facebook and Instagram. Full videos of our show are available on YouTube, and the full archive of our episodes is available at www.camandotisshow.com. Thanks again, and we'll see y'all next time.
Thank you.